The glass was already halfway to his lips when I realized someone had switched it. I didn't know his name then. I didn't know why the restaurant manager had checked the private dining room 3 times in 10 minutes, or why 2 men in dark suits stood near the entrance without touching their food. I only knew I had set that whiskey down myself, and the folded white napkin beneath it had been facing the window. Now it faced the door. Maybe that sounds ridiculous. A napkin, a glass, a tiny detail in a room filled with expensive watches, polished silver, and people who looked like they had never checked a bank balance before ordering dinner. But noticing small things was how I survived my life. At 26, I worked 6 nights a week at Bellini's, because my younger sister's college tuition didn't care that my feet hurt, my landlord didn't care that tips had been bad, and the electric company definitely didn't care that I was tired. I remembered who wanted lemon in their water, who hated onions, who tipped in cash, and which regular pretended not to need reading glasses. Small things mattered. That night, one of them saved a man's life. He sat at the center of the private room, like the chair had been built for him. Mid-30s, dark hair, charcoal suit, no tie, no wasted movement. Everyone else at the table spoke more than he did, but somehow they kept watching him before they laughed, ordered, or changed the subject. Power has a sound. Sometimes it is shouting. His sounded like silence. I had brought the whiskey 6 minutes earlier. 1 large cube of ice, 2 fingers of bourbon, white napkin angled toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Chicago. Then a server I didn't recognize stepped into the room, carrying a tray that was almost empty. Bellini's had 32 employees. I knew every face. His wasn't one of them. He moved behind the man in the charcoal suit for less than 3 seconds. No conversation, no eye contact, just a hand near the table, then gone. I should have called my manager. I should have waited. I should have told myself I was imagining things, because tired people make mistakes. Then the man reached for the glass. My stomach dropped. I crossed the room too fast, caught the edge of my tray against the table, and sent 2 water glasses and his whiskey crashing onto the marble floor. The sound cut through the room like a church bell. Everyone stopped. My manager went pale. One of the men by the door moved toward me and caught my wrist before I could step back. Not painfully, just firmly enough to tell me I wasn't going anywhere. The man in the charcoal suit raised one hand. The grip disappeared immediately. That frightened me more than if someone had yelled. He looked down at the broken glass, then at me. His eyes were grey, calm, unreadable. Why did you do that? My mouth went dry. Because someone changed your drink. Nobody moved. I pointed toward the hallway. There was a waiter in here. He doesn't work for us. One of his men crouched near the spilled whiskey without touching it, then looked up. Something changed in his face. The man in the charcoal suit watched me for a long second. What's your name? Emily Carter. He leaned back slowly. Emily Carter, he repeated, like he was filing it somewhere permanent. Then he glanced toward the empty hallway and said 3 quiet words. Find that waiter. Everyone moved at once. Everyone except me. I was still staring at the broken glass when he spoke again. Do you know who I am? I shook my head. For the first time, the corner of his mouth almost lifted. That may be the only reason you were brave enough to save me. I found out who Adrian Moretti was, 11 minutes later, and suddenly, every strange thing about the room made sense. My manager, Frank, pulled me into the service hallway, while the private dining room filled with quiet movement behind us. His face had gone so pale that even under the warm kitchen lights he looked grey. Emily, what were you thinking? He whispered. I stared at him. I thought someone tampered with his drink. That is Adrian Moretti. He said the name like it should explain everything. It did not. Okay. Frank blinked at me. Okay, Emily? Half the people in this city know that name. I work double shifts and fall asleep watching cooking videos. I am apparently in the other half. He dragged a hand over his face. His family owns restaurants, construction companies, warehouses, clubs. People say he controls things nobody puts on paper. That was when the cold feeling finally reached my spine. I looked back toward the dining room. Through the narrow window in the service door, I could see Adrian sitting exactly where I had left him, calm while everyone around him moved with purpose. He did not look like a man who had almost made a dangerous mistake. He looked like a man who had just discovered a problem and was already calculating how to solve it. Then the door opened. One of his men stepped into the hallway. "Mr. Moretti would like to speak with Miss Carter." Frank made a sound under his breath. I wiped my hands on my apron even though they were not wet. Am I allowed to finish my shift first? The man actually paused. Behind him, Adrian appeared. "Yes," he said. His voice was quieter than Frank's, but somehow it ended the conversation. I met his eyes. Good. Table 14 is still waiting on dessert. Something almost changed in his expression again. Not amusement exactly. Surprise. 5 minutes, he said. Then you can go back to work. I followed him into an empty side room. No guards came inside. He closed the door but stayed near it, leaving several feet between us. That detail mattered to me more than I wanted to admit. The drink was compromised, he said. You were right. My stomach tightened. Is everyone else safe? He studied me. That is your first question? It seems like the important one. Everyone else is safe. I let out a breath I had not realized I was holding. Adrian reached into his jacket and placed a business card on the table between us. No title, no company, just his name and a phone number. If you need anything, call. I looked at the card, then at him. I need to keep my job. You will. You do not own this restaurant. He tilted his head slightly. I can still make sure you keep your job. There it was. The part of him Frank had been afraid of. The certainty that doors opened because he expected them to. I do not want favors, I said. You saved my life. I stopped you from drinking something suspicious. That is a generous way to make it sound small. He reached into his jacket again, this time taking out an envelope and setting it beside the card. Thick, too thick. I did not touch it. No. His eyes narrowed slightly. You do not know what is inside. I know what an envelope full of cash looks like. It is not a payment. Then what is it? He had no answer ready. That surprised both of us. I pushed the envelope back toward him. If I take money for helping you, then I did not help you. I sold you something. For several seconds, the only sound was the distant clatter of plates from the kitchen. Adrian looked at the envelope as if nobody had ever returned one before. Most people ask me for more, he said. Most people probably know who you are. And now you do. I picked up the business card, mostly because refusing everything felt unnecessarily dramatic. Now I do. He nodded once. Then keep that. I slipped it into my apron pocket. Only for emergencies. Emily. His voice stopped me as I reached the door. What? There was nothing accidental about what happened tonight. I turned back. The calm in his face had changed. Not fear. Something heavier. The person who switched that glass knew exactly where I would be sitting, he said. Which means they knew this restaurant, this room, and my habits. I felt the hallway behind me suddenly seem much colder. Adrian looked toward the door, then back at me. And now they know your face too. For the rest of my shift, I kept Adrian Moretti's business card in my apron pocket and pretended it weighed nothing. It did. Every time I reached for my order pad, my fingers brushed the edge of it, and I remembered the way he had said, they know your face too. By midnight, Bellini's had returned to something close to normal. Plates moved through the kitchen, silverware clinked. A couple at table 9 argued quietly over tiramisu. Frank stopped hovering near me every 30 seconds. But the private room stayed occupied long after Adrian's dinner should have ended. Men came and went through the side entrance. Nobody raised their voice. Somehow that made it worse. I finished my closing work at 12:43 in the morning, counted my tips twice, and changed out of my black apron in the employee restroom. $112. Better than expected. Still not enough to cover the electric bill and send my sister, Grace, the money I had promised for textbooks. I folded the cash into my wallet and told myself that was the kind of problem I understood. Bills, rent, groceries, problems with numbers, problems that stayed where you put them. When I stepped outside, Chicago had turned cold and wet. Rain glazed the sidewalk, reflecting red brake lights and the yellow glow from the restaurant windows. I opened my umbrella and made it 6 steps before I noticed the black sedan parked across the street. Engine running, headlights off. Maybe it meant nothing. Chicago was full of black cars. I kept walking. At the corner, the sedan pulled away from the curb. Slowly. My heartbeat changed. I turned right instead of left. The car turned right too. I stopped under the awning of a closed pharmacy. The sedan stopped half a block behind me. That was when I took Adrian's card from my pocket. I stared at the number for 3 full seconds. Calling him felt absurd. Dramatic. Exactly the kind of thing I would normally make fun of in Grace's favorite television shows. Then the sedan rolled forward again. I called. He answered before the second ring. Emily. No hello. No question about who it was. He already knew. There is a car following me. His voice changed instantly. Where are you? I gave him the intersection. Stay somewhere public. Everything is closed. There is a hotel lobby 1 block east. Go inside. Do not walk home. How do you know there is a hotel there? A pause. Emily. Right. Not the time. I crossed the street toward the hotel, keeping my pace steady. The sedan stayed behind me. Then another black vehicle turned onto the block from the opposite direction. This one I recognized. It had been outside Bellini's earlier. It pulled between me and the first car, without drama, without speed, just positioning itself like a wall. The sedan that had followed me continued past the intersection and disappeared into the rain. Less than 2 minutes later, Adrian stepped out of the second vehicle. No coat, dark suit, rain collecting on his shoulders. He looked past me first, checking the street, then back at my face. Are you all right? I think so. He nodded once, but his jaw stayed tight. You are not taking the train tonight. I can get a cab. I will take you home. No. His eyes settled on mine. There it was again, that certainty. The expectation that people obeyed. Emily, someone followed you. And that does not make you my guardian. It makes this my responsibility. No. It makes it a problem connected to you. The words came out sharper than I intended, but I did not take them back. Rain tapped against my umbrella between us. Adrian looked at me for a long moment. Get in the car. That is exactly what I mean. What? You do not ask. You decide. Something in his expression shifted. Small, almost invisible. He glanced toward the street, then back at me. May I take you home? The question surprised me enough that I almost laughed. I did not. Yes. He opened the rear door, and I got in. The inside smelled faintly of leather and coffee. Adrian sat across from me rather than beside me, leaving space. You should not have had to call me tonight, he said. But I am glad you did. I looked out at the rain streaking the window. Do you know who was following me? Not yet. And when you do, he was quiet for a moment. Then I will understand why. It was not the answer I expected. Maybe that was why I believed him. We had driven less than a mile when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. 1 message. 4 words. You should have stayed quiet. The message stayed on my screen until the words stopped looking like words and became something colder. You should have stayed quiet. I showed Adrian without speaking. He read it once. His expression did not change, but the air inside the car did. Do not answer, he said. I was not planning to. He held out his hand. May I? That question again. Small, deliberate. Different from the man who had ordered people around at Bellini's, like the world was built to move when he spoke. I gave him the phone. He studied the number, then handed it back. It is probably temporary. That is comforting. It was not meant to be. I looked out the window. Chicago passed in wet streaks of light, storefronts dark, traffic thin, the city looking ordinary in a way that suddenly felt dishonest. Somewhere behind those windows, people were sleeping, making coffee, folding laundry, arguing about money. Normal problems. I wanted mine back. You said this was connected to you, I said. Tell me how. Adrian was quiet long enough that I thought he might refuse. Someone inside my organization knew where I would be tonight. Inside, the private room, the table, my drink, my routine. His voice remained calm, but now I understood that calm was not peace, it was control. That means the person who arranged it had information very few people had. So someone close to you. He looked at me. Possibly. I thought about the unfamiliar waiter, the steady way he moved. The fact that nobody had stopped him. He was not nervous. Adrian's eyes sharpened. Who? The waiter, the one who changed the glass. He did not look around like someone sneaking into a room. He walked like he belonged there. Adrian leaned forward slightly. What else do you remember? I closed my eyes. Bellinis, warm lights, white tablecloth, silver tray, the waiter passing behind Adrian. Dark hair, around 6 feet, grey vest. Anything distinctive? I almost said no. Then I saw it again. His right hand, the cuff at his wrist, a silver cufflink. Adrian went still. What kind? Round, dark center. There was a symbol on it, maybe a bird. Silence. I opened my eyes. What? He looked toward the front of the car. Daniel, change route. The driver nodded. My stomach tightened. Adrian. He faced me again. The symbol you saw is used by people connected to my family. Meaning what? Meaning the person in that room was not a stranger. The answer landed heavier than I expected. I thought about Frank, the kitchen, the familiar servers, all the people I saw every night. Then why am I the one being followed? Because you noticed him. That is all. Sometimes that is enough. I hated how reasonable he made fear sound. The car turned onto a quieter street, lined with brick apartment buildings. I recognized my neighborhood. Adrian had not asked for my address. You already knew where I lived. Yes. You investigated me. He did not deny it. My exhaustion disappeared beneath a wave of anger. Saving your life did not give you permission to enter mine. His gaze held mine. I needed to know whether you were connected to this. And? You are not. Congratulations. You searched a waitress and discovered she is a waitress. Emily. No, you do not get to make decisions about me because you are afraid of what happened to you. He was silent. For once, truly silent. The car stopped across from my building. Rain whispered against the roof. I reached for the door. I will have someone nearby tonight, he said. I turned back. No, Emily. You asked before, ask now. Something passed through his face. Resistance, habit, then restraint. Would you allow one person to watch the building from across the street until morning? I studied him. Across the street. No following Grace. No entering the building. No checking my apartment. Agreed. I opened the door. And Adrian? Yes? If you want me to trust you, stop treating information about my life like something you are entitled to. I stepped into the rain before he could answer. I was halfway to my building when my phone buzzed again. This time it was not a message, it was a photograph. Me leaving Bellini's 10 minutes earlier. The photograph was clear enough to show the rain on my hair and Adrian's car behind me. I stopped under the light outside my building and stared at it until my fingers went numb. Whoever had taken it had been close enough to know exactly when I left the restaurant. Close enough to follow without being seen. I turned toward the street. Adrian's car was still there. He had not driven away. I walked back across the sidewalk and held up my phone before he could say anything. His eyes moved from the screen to the rooftops, then to the parked cars, then back to me. Inside, he said. I folded my arms. Ask. He exhaled through his nose, visibly fighting instinct. Will you please go inside while I figure out where that came from? Better. I hated that I almost smiled. I went upstairs, locked the apartment door, and found Grace asleep on the couch, with an open chemistry textbook on her chest. For a few seconds, looking at her made everything feel normal again. I covered her with a blanket and stood by the window. Across the street, one dark vehicle remained parked beneath a broken street lamp. It stayed there until morning. The next day, I went to work anyway. Frank tried to send me home. I refused. Bills did not disappear because someone sent threatening messages. By 7 in the evening, Bellini's was full. By 8:15, the power went out in the private dining section. Only there. The rest of the restaurant stayed lit. Frank cursed at the breaker panel, while I carried candles to the back hall. That was when I saw the message written across a white tablecloth in black marker. You should have let him drink. My stomach dropped so fast I had to grip the edge of a chair. Frank saw it next and went silent. 10 minutes later, Adrian walked through the front door. He had not called first. He did not need to. Everyone seemed to know he was coming before he arrived. He stopped beside the table and read the words once. His face remained calm. Too calm. Emily, he said. Come with me. Where? Somewhere safe. I am working. Not tonight. Adrian. His gaze shifted to me. This is not optional. Anger burned through the fear. Then you learned nothing. The room around us felt smaller. Frank disappeared toward the kitchen with impressive timing. Adrian lowered his voice. Someone entered this restaurant, left a message for you, and walked away before anyone noticed. I understand that. Then come with me. You keep calling this protection. I looked toward the men waiting near the entrance, then back at him. It feels a lot like a cage. He went still. I could see the answer he wanted to give. The command. The certainty. Instead, he looked away for a moment. What would make you feel safe? The question surprised me more than anything else that night. Information. About what? Everything you know. Adrian studied my face. You may not like the answer. That should be my choice. He nodded once. There are 3 groups competing for control of several businesses my family has managed for years. Someone believes removing me would change the balance. And the person who changed your drink probably works for one of them. Probably. The cufflink says something worse. He paused. It suggests someone inside my circle helped him get close. I thought about the waiter's confidence again. The way he moved through Bellini's, as if someone had told him exactly where to go. So this is not just someone coming after you. No. Adrian looked at the message on the tablecloth. It is someone testing how far they can reach. My phone buzzed in my pocket. This time it was Grace. One text. Someone is outside asking about you. My breath stopped. I showed Adrian. He read it, and for the first time since meeting him, I saw something stronger than control in his face. Fear. Not for himself. For me. I called Grace before Adrian could say anything. She answered on the first ring. Emily? Her voice was low. Too low. Are you inside? I asked. Yes. Door locked. Who is outside? A man in a grey coat. He asked if you lived here. I told him no. Good girl. My chest tightened. Do not open the door for anyone. Adrian was already speaking quietly to one of his men, but I caught only fragments. My building. Front entrance. No contact unless necessary. He looked at me when he finished. May I send someone there? I almost said no out of reflex. Then I heard Grace breathing through the phone. Yes. Outside only. Nobody enters unless Grace asks. Agreed. He turned back to his man. You heard her. That mattered. More than I expected. 20 minutes later, Grace texted that the stranger had left. Adrian's people had not approached her, had not knocked, had not frightened her. They simply stayed across the street until the block was quiet. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt tired in a place sleep could not fix. Bellini's closed early. Frank blamed an electrical issue, but everyone knew the real reason. Adrian waited while I changed out of my uniform. When I came back, he stood near the front windows with his hands in his coat pockets, watching rain slide down the glass. For once, he looked less like the man everyone feared, and more like someone carrying a weight nobody else could see. May I take you home? He asked. No command this time, just the question. Yes. The car moved through downtown Chicago in near silence. I watched the streets pass by, then noticed we were not heading directly toward my apartment. Where are we going? Nowhere you did not agree to. He nodded toward the front. Daniel is taking the longer route, so we can make sure no one is following. I looked at him. Thank you for telling me. I am learning. Slowly. Apparently. That almost made me laugh. Almost. A few minutes later, he handed me a paper cup from the console. Coffee. 2 sugars. No cream. I stared at it. How do you know how I take this? Adrian seemed to realize the problem before I finished asking. Frank told Daniel. You asked? Yes. That is better than searching my apartment for coffee evidence. His mouth moved in the smallest smile. I was not planning to search your apartment. Progress. The warmth from the cup settled into my hands. Outside, the rain softened. Inside the car, something else did too. Why do you do it? I asked. Do what? Control everything. He looked out the window. Because when I was young, everything important disappeared without warning. His answer came quietly. My father trusted the wrong people. My mother spent years waiting for bad news. I decided uncertainty was weakness. And now? He was silent for a moment. Now I am beginning to think fear dressed as control is still fear. I looked at him then. Really looked. Not at the suit, the expensive watch, the calm voice. At the man underneath all of it. That sounds exhausting. It is. You know what is strange? What? People probably think you are never afraid. He turned toward me. People are often wrong. The car stopped at a red light. For a few seconds, the city around us seemed suspended in wet gold and red reflections. Then Adrian said, "When I saw that message from your sister, I was afraid." My throat tightened. For Grace. For both of you. For both of you. There was no possession in his voice. No claim. Just truth. The light changed. We drove on. By the time we reached my building, the grey-coated stranger was gone. Adrian did not get out. He did not send anyone upstairs. He only asked, "Would you text me when you are inside?" Yes. I opened the door, then paused. "Adrian?" "Yes? Thank you for asking." He gave one small nod. I walked toward the entrance, feeling something unfamiliar beneath the fear. Trust. Fragile. Incomplete, but real. Then, halfway to the door, I remembered the silver cufflink again. Not just the symbol, the initials engraved beneath it. V.H. I did not sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the cufflink again. Silver circle, dark center, small crest, and beneath it, 2 letters I had almost forgotten because they had seemed meaningless at the time. V.H. At 7:12 the next morning, I texted Adrian. I remembered something. He called immediately. What? The cufflink. There were initials under the symbol. Silence. Which initials? V.H. The silence on the other end changed. It became heavier. Are you sure? Yes. Emily, do not go anywhere alone today. I sat up in bed. Who is V.H.? He did not answer right away. Victor Hale. Who is that? Someone I have trusted for 15 years. The words landed slowly. Trusted how much? Enough that he knew where I would sit at Bellini's. I looked toward the kitchen, where Grace was making toast and humming badly along with the radio. Do you think he did this? I think I need proof before I decide what I think. That answer surprised me. A few days earlier, I would have expected certainty. Orders. A conclusion delivered like a verdict. Instead, Adrian sounded careful. What do you want me to do? I asked. Stay with Grace. That is not what I mean. A pause. I know. His voice softened. I want you to tell me exactly what you remember. Nothing more. So I did. The waiter's height, the grey vest, the way he moved, the cufflink, the initials. Adrian listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "Thank you. Not you did well. Not leave this to me. Just thank you. It mattered." By noon I was back at Bellini's. Frank hated the idea, but I refused to let fear make every decision for me. The lunch shift was quiet. Too quiet. I kept checking the front door every time the bell rang. At 2:37, the restaurant phone rang. Frank answered, then looked toward me. "Emily, someone says Grace collapsed at school." Everything inside me dropped. I grabbed my coat. Which hospital? Mercy West. I was halfway out the back door before I remembered Adrian's warning. My phone showed no missed calls from Grace. I called her. No answer. I called again. Nothing. Fear pushed harder than logic. I took a cab. Halfway to Mercy West, my phone buzzed. Grace. Hey, what is going on? I was in chemistry lab. My blood turned cold. You are okay? Yes. Why? I looked out the window. We were no longer heading toward the hospital. The driver had turned onto an industrial road near the river. Stop the car, I said. He kept driving. I said stop. Traffic shortcut, he replied. It was not. I knew Chicago well enough to know that. My heart started pounding, but panic would not help me. I looked at the dashboard. Air freshener. Parking receipt. A business card tucked near the console. Hale Logistics. My mouth went dry. I lowered my phone beside my leg and opened Adrian's contact. No time to explain. I sent one word. Victor. Then I turned on location sharing. The cab stopped outside an old office building beside a warehouse district. 2 men waited near the entrance. Neither touched me. Neither needed to. Please come inside, Miss Carter, one said. Calm voice. Polite tone. Somehow that made it worse. I stepped out because I needed time. Because Adrian had taught me something without meaning to. Control was not always power. Sometimes power was noticing what everyone else missed. Inside, the building smelled like dust and old coffee. I counted doors, 2 exits, 4 cameras, 1 stairwell. On a desk near the hallway sat a silver cufflink. Same crest, same dark center, same initials. Then a man in his late 50s stepped from an office, wearing a navy suit and a tired smile. "Emily Carter," he said. "I was hoping we could talk." I stared at his left wrist. One cufflink was missing. Victor Hale followed my gaze and smiled a little less. "You really do notice everything." Victor Hale closed the office door behind us, with the kind of calm that made my skin prickle. No raised voice, no threats, just an older man in a navy suit, standing beside a desk covered with neatly stacked folders, as if I had arrived for a job interview instead of being brought here under false pretenses. "You have caused quite a complication," he said. I stayed near the doorway. I dropped a glass. "You noticed the wrong thing. That sounds like your problem." His smile faded. Good. If he expected me to tremble, disappointment was the only thing I wanted to give him. Victor walked toward the window overlooking the river. "Adrian was supposed to step aside quietly. The city needs stability. And you decided you should provide it. I spent 15 years helping build what he inherited. There it was. Not loyalty. Resentment." I glanced toward the desk again. A shipping invoice lay half-covered beneath a folder. "Hale Logistics, Pier 42, Thursday." I forced myself not to stare. "Why bring me here?" "Because Adrian listens to you." I almost laughed. "You clearly have not heard us argue. He changes around you." Victor turned. "That makes you useful." My phone was still in my coat pocket. Location sharing was active, but I had no idea whether Adrian had seen it. I needed time. "What do you want me to tell him?" "That if he withdraws from several operations and transfers control, you go home. And if he refuses..." Victor tilted his head. "He will not." His confidence told me more than his words. He thought Adrian would choose me. That frightened me, because part of me thought so too. A phone on Victor's desk rang. He answered, listened, and his expression tightened. "How?" One word, then silence. He looked at me. I kept my face blank. "Your people lost the car that followed us." I guessed. His eyes narrowed. "You shared your location." I said nothing. He reached for my phone, but I stepped back. Before either of us moved again, the lights in the hallway went out. Victor froze. Not fear, recognition. Somewhere beyond the office, a door opened. Footsteps followed. Slow. Controlled. Victor looked toward the hallway and muttered, "Adrian." My breath caught. 2 minutes later, Adrian appeared in the doorway, with Daniel and another man behind him. Nobody rushed. Nobody shouted. Adrian's eyes found mine first. "Emily? I am okay." Only then did he look at Victor. I had never seen disappointment look so cold. 15 years, Adrian said quietly. Victor straightened his jacket. 15 years of cleaning up your family's mistakes. So you created one bigger than all of them. Victor gestured toward me. You are going to throw away everything for a waitress? Adrian did not look at me when he answered. No. My stomach dropped. Then he continued. I am going to stop becoming the kind of man who thinks people are things to trade. Victor stared at him. So did I. Adrian stepped closer, still calm. Emily leaves. Whatever business remains between us, stays between us. Victor laughed once. And if I refuse? Adrian's voice stayed almost gentle. You will not. Something shifted in the hallway. More men appeared, but they were not Victor's. Faces I recognized from Bellini's. People from Adrian's organization. Victor looked from one to another, and finally understood. His authority had already disappeared before Adrian entered the room. I moved toward the door, but stopped beside the desk. Adrian. He looked at me. I pointed to the shipping invoice. Pier 42, Thursday. Victor's face changed. Adrian saw it. That was enough. Daniel took the document. No struggle, no spectacle, just the quiet collapse of a plan built on the assumption that nobody would notice the small things. Outside, the cold air hit my face like waking from a nightmare. Adrian followed me onto the sidewalk but stopped several feet away. May I come closer? My throat tightened. Even now? He asked. I nodded. He came near, but did not touch me. I am sorry, he said. For what Victor did. For bringing a world like this close enough to reach you. I looked at him. You did not make his choices, but I made plenty of mine. His voice broke just slightly around the edges. And some of them gave men like him power. For the first time, I understood the decision forming behind his eyes. He had not come merely to save me. He had come to end something. What happens now? I asked. Adrian looked toward the river, then back at me. Now I decide what is worth keeping. The first thing I noticed when I got home was how ordinary everything looked. Grace had left a coffee mug in the sink. One of her textbooks was open on the kitchen table. The radiator clicked twice before settling into its usual tired hum. Nothing had changed, and somehow that made everything harder. I stood inside the apartment with my coat still on and stared at the lock on the door. I had checked it 3 times before I realized what I was doing. Emily? Grace came out of her room wearing sweatpants and an old Northwestern sweatshirt. She stopped when she saw my face. What happened? I wanted to say nothing. I wanted to tell her I was fine, because that was what older sisters were supposed to say. Instead, I sat down at the kitchen table and covered my face with both hands. I got scared today. Grace did not ask for details. She just pulled out the chair beside me and sat there. That kindness nearly broke me. For the next 2 days, I did not go to Bellini's. Frank told me to take as much time as I needed. Grace stayed close without making it obvious. Adrian did not call. That surprised me. Part of me expected black cars, messages, people checking the hallway. Nothing. On the 3rd morning, I received one text. I am here if you want to talk. No pressure. I read it 6 times before setting my phone down. The space he gave me felt unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable. I had spent days fighting his control, and now that he was finally respecting my boundaries, I realized how much easier it had been to argue with him than to decide what I actually wanted. That afternoon, I went back to Bellini's. The private dining room had been cleaned. The tablecloth was gone. New glasses stood where the old ones had been. I carried a tray through the room and heard one glass tap lightly against another. My whole body froze. Just for a second. My breathing went shallow. Frank noticed from the doorway. You want to take 5? No. Then I changed my mind. Actually, yes. I sat in the employee break room and waited for my heartbeat to slow. That was the part nobody tells you about after danger passes. Your mind understands you are safe before your body does. The world keeps moving, but some part of you is still standing in the old moment, waiting for it to happen again. That evening, Adrian came to Bellini's alone. No men in dark suits, no reserved room, no one announcing him. He waited near the entrance until I looked up. Can we talk? He asked. I pointed toward an empty table in the corner. We sat across from each other like 2 normal people, which felt almost impossible considering how we had met. Adrian looked tired. Not physically. Deeper than that. Victor has been removed from every part of the organization, he said. Several others chose to leave with him. The businesses tied to them are being separated from mine. And the rest? I am restructuring everything I can legally keep. I studied him. Why? He looked at his hands. Because I spent years telling myself I was protecting my family by controlling every room I walked into. Then you showed up, and made me see how often control becomes fear with better clothes. I did not know what to say to that. Adrian lifted his eyes. I owe you an apology. For Victor? No. His choices belong to him. He paused. For mine, I investigated you without permission. I put people around you without asking. I told myself it was protection because that word sounded better than control. The restaurant noise faded around us. You did save my life, I said. After you saved mine first. That does not mean we owe each other forever. I know. His answer came immediately. No argument. No claim. That is what I finally understand. Something in my chest loosened. Not completely, but enough. I am still angry. You should be. I am also grateful. You do not owe me gratitude. I almost smiled. You really are learning. Slowly. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Adrian asked, when all of this settles, would you let me take you to coffee? I raised an eyebrow. You know I work in a restaurant that serves coffee. Then somewhere you do not have to bring it to me. I looked at the man I had first seen sitting at the center of a room everyone feared. He seemed different now. Not weaker. Just quieter in a way that no longer demanded obedience. Maybe, I said. Adrian nodded like maybe was enough. He stood, thanked me for my time, and walked toward the door without asking for anything more. I watched him leave, and realized that was the moment something changed between us. Not when I knocked the glass from his hand. Not when he came for me. Not when his whole world turned against itself. It changed when he finally understood that caring about someone did not give him the right to decide for them. And for the first time since the night at Bellini's, I believed we might both come out of this with more than survival.